Hello and welcome to the Raw podcast brought to you by the Sunderland Echo. And today we're going to be looking ahead to Sunderland's championship fixture against Burnley at Turf Moor. So to preview the match, joining myself, Joe Nicholson, we are joined by Dan Black from our sister title, the Burnley Express. Dan, how's things at your end?
Good afternoon, Joe. Yeah, all good, thanks. Like I was saying before, I just got back from the press conference with Vincent Kompany to preview Friday night's game. So, yeah, just cracking on with that, really.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned there that you've been to see Vincent Kompany today. He's been speaking to the media. We're recording this on Thursday ahead of Friday night's game at Turf Moor. So what were the kind of main lines to come out of that press conference from Kompany?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, he was looking at Friday night's game and the opposition as you know, is a formality. Yeah, meant a lot of nice things to say about Sunderland. He was saying he thinks they speak the same language in terms of stylistics and philosophies and stuff, and the way they approach games. He thinks they're from a similar family of football, and while he was appreciative and understanding of the situation at the club at the minute with their kind of injury crisis that they're suffering. He knows they've got the players that can step in and prove themselves. So he knows it's going to be a difficult game on Friday night. One they're going to take very, very seriously.
Mm-hmm. Looking at the table, it's obviously looking very good for Burnley. Top of the table by some distance as well, 13 points clear. But will the aim for them now be, is there a realistic chance of them breaking the record for the most points in the championship? They're on 83 points. There's 9 games to go. And I was just looking at the highest points total in the championship is 106 points that Reading got in the 2005-06 season. So is there any talk of that potentially the Burnley team going and beating that record?
I think that Reading side was very good and very consistent, wasn't it? I spoke to Glenn Little, the former Burnley winger, the other day on the way to the Hull City game, who was part of that Reading side that set the record. And you know, he thinks that Burnley are going to do it. He thinks they'll get there. I think they can reach 110 points with the points remaining. You know, they've still got some very tough games. I mentioned Sunderland coming up. They've got Middlesbrough away, Sheffield United straight after that over the Easter period. So there are tough games. So to hit those kind of numbers is going to be tough. It's not beyond the realms of possibility, but I think they've got the work cut out to do it. You know, we ask Vincent Kompany about records all the time, and he won't acknowledge it. He won't address it. He just wants to crack on game by game as they do and see where it gets them. But you know, there's only been 5 points in the history of the second. 5 points, 5 teams in the history of the second tier that have reached the 100-point mark. So to reach that is a real achievement, and I think that's well within their reach.
Mm-hmm. Just another thing that Kompany said in his press conference that you mentioned, he was talking quite highly of Sunderland. It came up the game that they played back in October, the 4-2 win for Burnley, where Sunderland were 2-0 up at half-time and Burnley came back and won 4-2. A lot was kind of made of that. I remember we spoke to you before that game and Burnley had quite a lot of draws before them. It hadn't really maybe clicked as well as it had done, but it seemed like that result, coming back from 2 goals down at Sunderland, really helped them kick on. Would you say that's the point of the season where it really did start to click for Burnley?
Yeah, I think it's certainly kind of engineered this run that they've been on. They've been in scintillating form since then, and as we said, you know, you bring so many players in the summer, a new management team, a new style of play, a new backroom staff. You know, you've lost, you know, some of your talisman from previous seasons under Sean Dyche. It's always going to be tough, and it's always going to take time for that new regime to gel. You know, Vincent Kompany wanted to revolutionise Burnley, and that is exactly what it's done. But it has taken some time. You know, that period they were dropping points and conceding goals, cheap goals, and you kind of thought, well, maybe they'll need a second season for it all to really kick in, and then they can push on. But yeah, since then, since coming back from that 2-goal deficit to win 4-2, the halftime changes that came with it, and I think that was the moment where they stood up and thought, we are a really good side, and we can kick on and really prove ourselves to be one of the best teams ever at this level.
I think what it showed as well was the strength and depth. Like you mentioned, the changes that he made at half time. Was it Manuel Benson came off the bench and and scored one and really caused Sunderland a lot of problems that day. And looking at Burnley's kind of top goal scorers, they've got Nathan Teller is top with 19, but you've then kind of got a lot of players that have, Zahuri's got 11, Benson's got 9, Rodriguez has got 9. It seems like the goals have been kind of split around the team. There's not really been one standout player.
I think that's been the beauty of it this season, and that's something that Vincent Kompany wanted to bring into the side. He didn't want to be dependent or reliant on, one main goal scorer, one leading goal scorer. He wanted goals to come from all over the pitch. And this season, I don't know if this is another record or not. You might have to do some digging, but I might have to do some digging. But they've had 19 different goal scorers this season, and if you're coming up with those kind of numbers, it's only going to lead you to success. They've got threats from all over the pitch. The fullbacks are high up. They're playing inverted. They're playing on the outside, overlapping, underlapping. It's just the way they play is so fluid, and the structure to it is it's really easy on the eye and really good to watch. And they just every time they get forward, it sounds they just look like they're going to score.
Well, as you said, Kompany mentioned today in his press conference that he said that Sunderland and Burnley speak like a similar language in football, and he mentioned also the wingers, how Burnley and Sunderland both play with two natural wingers, and how they maybe play quite a similar way. So has it kind of been throughout the whole season, Burnley playing this 4-2-3-1, but it's been very possession based under Kompany? That's clearly something that he's wanted to implement at Turf Moor. Yeah,
he's been very big on that. I think if you were to look through the statistics, there's probably not many games where they haven't had 65% plus of the ball in games. They've been very, very dominant, and just going back to what I said previously about it all clicking. They were dominant in earlier games without really providing as much of a threat, but now it's all come together. Now they're all understanding of each other's positions and where they need to be and how each other play, the strengths and the weaknesses. They're just going at teams from all different areas of the pitch, and it's frightening at times. And as Burnley take more and more control and they start taking over more and more territory, teams drop deeper, and they're just sitting ducks at times. I think it's 14 games this season now in which they've scored three or more goals, and it could have been a lot more at times as well, because as soon as they've got the third, they've taken the foot off the gas a little bit and just play keep ball. So yeah, he's been very big on that this season, and the defence have played a massive part in that.
Mm-hmm. We mentioned some of the players just previously who are kind of key to this Burnley side, but are there any other names that you think are worth mentioning that Sunderland should look out for on Friday night?
Yeah, I mean, this, as I said, they've got threats from all over. Ian Matson were at the press conference today. We spoke to him, 21-year-old from Chelsea, Netherlands under 21 international. I think he was January Championship Player of the Season. Has been excellent this year. This has kind of been, I wouldn't say a breakthrough season, because I think he was impressive at Coventry City as well, and before that at Charlton. But I think this has been the season where he's really come through and matured. He's added more to his game. He's strengthened defensively, but he's a threat going forward. 4 goals, 6 assists. He's contributed to many of the 16 clean sheets that we've kept this season, and he continues to go from strength to strength. I presume he'll be a player they'll look at keeping hold of if the option's there in the summer, depending on what Chelsea want to do with him. And for me, I think one of the unsung heroes of the piece this season has been Josh Cullen in the middle of the park. He's been outstanding. He's such a good ball player. Very composed on the ball, very confident, and he just makes everything tick. And when he's on form, Burnley are on form, and you kind of notice just how much they miss him when he isn't in the team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Cullen, a player that had worked with Kompany previously, hadn't he, and came in the summer. So it looks like he's been a good signing for them. But just before the international break, they had that 6-0 defeat against Manchester City in the FA Cup. But was that just a case of Man City being Man City and being probably the best team in the country, and that shouldn't really have an impact on Burnley coming back to the Championship, should it?
You had to bring that up, didn't you? I'm going to hang up then. It was a long afternoon, that. But at the same time, you kind of just have to sit there and admire just how good Manchester City are. We've kind of gone through a theme as Burnley fans and Burnley reporters of going to the Etihad and getting beat 5-0. I think there were 4 or 5 successive 5-0s under Sean Dyche in the Premier League, and kind of got to a stage where you're just kind of getting used to that. I think there's a bit more optimism going into it this time, but again, I think it just shows the levels, between the top end of the Championship and the top end of the Premier League. City were just incredible. For the first half an hour, I thought Burnley did very well, kept them at arm's length. Erling Haaland didn't touch the ball. A lot of the flair players, Kevin De Bruyne, were kept quiet, and you just thought, well, maybe we've got a chance here. And then kind of the last, Haaland's had 2 touches at the end of the first half and scored 2 goals, and that's the kind of player he is. He's just phenomenal talent. He's a monster of the game, and will go on to break many records in English football. And once he got his hat trick at the start of the second half, it was just kind of they just made it look easy, really. Just knocking the ball about and manufacturing openings, and they've got so many good players, haven't they? Mm. I mean, I know you look at Burnley, the offerings that they've got on the pitch in terms of the Championship, but it's another level at Manchester City, and they really were outstanding. And it was a shame, but I admired kind of Vincent Kompany's approach after the game. He was almost saying, like, if I could play that game 10 times more, I would do, to find where we went wrong and find ways of addressing it, and how we can strengthen that and improve. And that's what he's all about. And he's still not talking about promotion. He's still not talking about the title. He just wants his team to improve game on game. And if they've learned from that 6-0 defeat, then that's brilliant. I think it's kind of shown the level they'll need to be at next year. It's not Man City they particularly need to bridge the gap with, but there is a bridge that needs to be gapped in terms of stepping up to the Premier League.
Yeah, as you say, it does just show the big difference, isn't it? Burnley obviously runaway leaders in the Championship and then going and playing Man City, and there's still a big difference there. But
yeah, let's not forget as well. They'd beaten Leipzig 7-1 in the Champions League a few days before. That's the kind of teams you're coming up against. So it's I don't think it says too much about Burnley. They can take a lot of positives from that first half an hour, and then Man City became Man City in the final hour, and they'll recruit in the summer if they go up, and these young players will all learn from that, and they'll get better and develop from that. And they went to Old Trafford earlier in the season in the Carabao Cup and gave a good account of themselves. They've beaten Bournemouth at the Vitality Stadium in an earlier round in the FA Cup. So the talent's there, and I think they'll be fine next year. I think they'll hold their own if they do get promoted.
As you say, a lot has gone right this season, as the league table shows. But what has it just been like? Because a lot was made of the change of style from going from Sean Dyche to Vincent Kompany. And although I think it was 6 seasons you had in the Premier League, and now you've come down to the Championship, but I imagine for supporters and even reporters like yourself, it's been quite an enjoyable season, winning a lot of games and playing in the style that you have done.
Yeah, I think sometimes you need that, don't you? I think when we spoke earlier on in the season, I told you how much I enjoy the Championship. It's a great division. It's a challenging division. It's so competitive, and it's been relentless this year. Obviously with the World Cup, it's been condensed, so it's been Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Wednesday, Sunday. The fixtures have been all over the place, so it's been really full on. But I think we got to that stage in the Premier League where we'd almost maybe got as far as we could under Sean Dyche. It kind of dried up a little bit. We were battling every week. You were getting dominated week in, week out. It was attritional, and I think the enjoyment of it all just kind of like was diluted a little bit for the fans. And I think this season has been one of those where they've kind of started appreciating football again, and they're enjoying themselves. There's sellout crowds every week at the turf, and they're travelling in the numbers. Regardless of how many hundreds of miles they've got to go at the weekend for away games. And yeah, it's been a nice little break for them. And I think some of them would, if they could, they'd stay in the Championship and have another season of this. But it's going to be a really intriguing campaign next year to see what Vincent Kompany can bring to it, and whether they are kind of the real deal and they can hold their own at the highest level in England.
Just going back to Friday's game then, have you seen much of Sunderland this season? How do you think the two sides would match up? Kompany, as we said before, seems to think they play quite a similar style.
Yeah, well, I was gutted because I actually missed the game at the stadium a lot in October. So I checked. I was aware. I checked the score at halftime, and I thought, well, that was a good one to miss. And then you go back at full time and see that they've won 4-2. You think, oh god, typical. Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting game. I'm really looking forward to it. Sunderland are an attacking side. They're more than capable on the day. I know they've been hit with injuries. Players like Dan Ballard and Ross Stewart are going to be huge. They're going to leave huge holes in any side. And Sunderland have been quite reliant on them this season, so that's going to have an impact. And I think when you beat Borough at the Stadium a lot and 2-0, and they were flying at the time, and you ended up winning 3 or 4 games, and now you've one win in 7, is it something like that? It's probably coincided with this little negative pattern of injuries you've had, but that Middlesbrough result and the win away at Norwich shows how capable Tony Mowbray's side are, and Burnley won't take Sunderland lightly by any, not at all. Regardless of how many key players they've got out, they have got strength in depth. They've got some really, really good prospects, really young players that they'll be hungry to prove themselves now, and they'll want to come into this side and have a bit of a run in it as well. So they'll be well up for it on Friday night, and they'll make life hard for Burnley.
Yeah, as you mentioned there, as we've said before in this podcast, Sunderland have a lot of talented players, but when you've lost pretty much the spine of your team, when you've lost Dan Ballard, Corey Evans, Ross Stewart, a couple of other players as well, like Adji Elise's out for the season, it is really difficult to replace. And I think that's been the difference with Sunderland and some of the other teams going for promotion, and Burnley being an example of that strength in depth. I think you had 13 players away on international duty. So I was just going to ask you about that. And I think Company said today there's only one player that hadn't come back. Most of them had come back okay. So what's kind of the latest team news from the Burnley end?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think, in terms of playing us, it's probably coming at the worst possible time for you, perhaps, in terms of that. You've mentioned the players that you're going to be missing there. Where we've just come through our bad patch. We've had a lot of players out. Harwood Bellis, Bayer's been missing, Matson's been missing, Brownhill's out, and others of Jay Rodriguez, who was the leading scorer at the time of his absence. That he's been out as well. So they have had their issues as well, and they're just coming through that now. I think Company said that they had a full bill of health. Everyone was available for training. I don't think everyone's going to be in contention to play the Sunderland game. I don't think we'll see Jay Rodriguez or Josh Brownhill. They have not had any minutes. But I think Taylor Harwood Bellis, could feature. Manuel Benson's obviously had a bit of game time just beforehand, so he'll come back into it as well. So they are kind of back up to full strength now. And for the first time in a long time, we might actually see, the trio of Teller, Benson and Zaruri playing behind Ashley Barnes in the final third, which is, a frightening prospect. But yeah, they've had 13 players on international duty. I think that kind of shows the level that they're at the minute. A few playing for the under-21 sides, and many playing for the senior sides. In Euro 2024 qualifying campaigns, and I think the only player that's doubtful is going to be Lyle Foster, South African striker, who's, I believe, has had some passport issues, a few difficulties there. So he's struggling getting back into the country. Whether he gets back here in time, I think South Africa were in Liberia for their final AFCON qualifying game. So it's a race against time for him. I don't think he would have started anyway, but he'd certainly have been part of the match day squad.
Yeah, there's a couple of Sunderland players as well that have been away with their countries. Ahmad Diallo, for example, was away playing for the Ivory Coast on Tuesday, so he wouldn't have got back until later in this week. And it is a quick turnaround, isn't it, with the game coming Friday? So both sides may have a few doubts because of players being away on international duty. But Dan, we usually just finish by asking our guests to have a quick score prediction. How do you think the game is going to go at Turf Moor on Friday nights?
I think, given the situations that we've broached, and the fact that Burnley, I think the 22 games in all competitions unbeaten at Turf Moor. I'd have to go for a home win. I'll say 2 or 3-0. I think just back to full strength. Burnley are purring at the minute. Potentially, if they win the next 2, they back in the Premier League, and they'll all be really ramped up for these next 2 and the next 3 over the Easter period with Borough and Sheffield United to follow. So yeah, I'll probably go with a strong home win.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think I'll probably go 2-0 Burnley. I think it's a very difficult test for Sunderland with the players they've got out, and Burnley still have that motivation of trying to seal promotion, trying to potentially get this points record. And I think it is a big ask for Sunderland going there with the players they've got out. But we have seen they can go and cause teams problems. They went to Norwich away a couple of weeks ago and beat them, and no one really saw that coming. But I think the league table shows this is probably the toughest test in the Championship, and Burnley sound like they're in pretty good nick heading into this game. But I'm sure it'll be a good atmosphere at Turf Moor. Sunderland always travel well with their fans going away to ground, so I'm sure it'll be a good occasion on Friday night live on Sky Sports. So Dan, thanks a lot for joining us on the latest episode of the Raw podcast. If you like what we do with the podcast, please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel or wherever you listen to your podcasts, and leaving a review. For all the latest SAFC news, you can head over to the Sunderland section of the Sunderland Echo website, and you can find the thoughts of Sunderland head coach Tony Mowbray. He spoke to the media earlier this week, and we'll also have more build-up to Friday's match against Burnley at Turf Moor. So once again, thanks a lot for listening to the Raw podcast.